I'm a teacher by training. I was a special ed teacher in a public separate school most of my career in upstate New York. And I happen to believe that teachers are the answer, not the problem. And I believe that any teacher who decides that they want to help their kids to become readers and writers, it's going to take lots of self-reflection and risk-taking and problem-solving. You can't wait for someone to hand you the scripted program and think that that's going to get you there. You have to get started. You have to think about how is every child in my class working toward having a way to communicate and interact. And you have to start immediately figuring out how do I make print a part of our everyday interactions in this classroom.
In 1990, we developed a course like this for the very first time and offered it at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. We have been teaching that course in various iterations, focused on various populations of kids with significant disabilities ever since. So the idea of this training is that we can assist other people in sort of doing that introductory level information around how do you teach children with significant disabilities how to read and write.
We were really motivated to develop this course because we know that there's a lot of capacity across the state of Michigan, and we wanted to try to support that. We wanted to support in-state people in being able to continue to build the knowledge and skills of teachers across the state, and felt like it was really time for us to collaborate and work together with some of those really skilled people in order to help them be able to take the reins and move forward with it.
So what's different about the way we think about literacy is that we really and truly believe all kids can learn to read and write. And we think all means all. We don't think that it's dependent on the degree of intelligence, the measured capability in vision or hearing. We think that we can teach all children to read and write. We don't think that's necessarily easy or quick, but we think it's really important, and the more disabled a child is, the more important it is. The more that your disability changes your ability to act on your world, the more important it becomes that you control the people and the experiences that you're going to be a part of. The only way to do that is with good communication and with the ability to read and write. Reading and writing take you beyond face-to-face, time-dependent interaction. They allow you to think and slowly compose ideas, put them together in the way that you want before you share them. Those become powerful ways of controlling your world or impacting your world if you're a person with disabilities.
Attendees who participate in this training will actually get some of the knowledge and skills that they need in order to address some of the systemic challenges that we've had. So for example, we have new standards all the time, and those standards are so high. And trying to think about how do I have expectations that my children are going to learn while I'm looking at standards that are well beyond what they can do right now, that's something that we address specifically, helping teachers think that through. We help teachers think about universal design for learning as a solution to really help them meet the needs of students with low incidence disabilities that, as UDL has been out there,
this training is different than lots of other trainings in the fact that we focus comprehensively. So our goal is not to sell you on a curriculum. Our goal is to help you understand an approach. That approach is comprehensive. We're not going to assume that all children only learn one way. In fact, we know that's not the case. We're going to try and put together a framework and strategies that allow you to help all children.
The primary goal of the course is to make sure that all students with disabilities, especially those with the most significant low incidence disabilities, have an opportunity to learn to read and write every day. There are so many things that have to happen, beginning with teachers having a really good set of expectations and beliefs about what's possible for children. And then, in addition to that, having some strategies that they can apply and knowledge and skills that allow them to tweak those strategies. And we feel like teachers can do that if we can provide them with some implementation supports and knowledge and skills. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. Emergent literacy is all of the things that children do that are related to reading and writing. So banging on a keyboard, reading a book, playing with sounds and letters, all of those things that children do on their way to being able to read in order to comprehend and write in order to communicate with other people. Conventional literacy is really restricted to reading text or Braille, and being able to read it for meaning. So not just being able to say the words, but being able to read the words and understand them. And on the writing side, being able to use print or Braille in order to write words that people who don't know you are able to read and understand. So the 4-block literacy approach is a conventional reading and writing approach. So it's a framework to organize the way that we teach conventional reading and writing skills. The 4 blocks are word study, self-directed reading, guided reading, and writing. Those are the 4 primary areas that we have to teach all kids every day if they're going to become readers and writers. And Patricia Cunningham created that 4 blocks approach to make it easier for teachers to think about organizing all of the different things they were going to have to do every day.
If a school wants to seriously address literacy, they have to decide that all children can learn to read and write. Then they have to act in ways that would make that possible. They would have to choose a comprehensive curriculum, comprehensive approach to instruction. They couldn't buy into one box or binder. They couldn't decide that some children can't learn or that some children can. They'd have to provide an opportunity and support teachers in learning how to do that.
So I think there are lots of constraints that absolutely make it hard to try to make sure that all children can learn to read and write. We have infinite needs and limited time. So as we think about across our week and this notion of comprehensive instruction, what we think about is how do we take advantage of every instructional minute that we have? And how do we divide those minutes across the things that are most important? I happen to think that literacy and communication are most important. And so the first thing that I'm going to make time for in my day, or the first thing I'm going to teach when I have time in my day, is literacy. I'm going to think about a day where I'm eking out every possible instructional minute by having other students reading with my students, by taking advantage of technology so that my children can read with and listen to computers read to them. I'm going to not think that every child needs to learn one-on-one, but I'm going to maximize the amount of time that I have with the teacher and use other classroom staff to support that small group instruction, as opposed to thinking about a pretty traditional approach that we've had, where this idea that children with low incidence disabilities have to be taught one-on-one. And when we divide up the 50, 60, 75 minutes of instructional time that we often have in our special ed classrooms, and we divide that equally among the students who are in that class, we end up with children who are getting 10 and 15 minutes of instruction a day, and nobody's going to become a reader and a writer that way. So if we group children, suddenly everybody's getting 60 or 75 minutes a day, and we can dramatically make a difference in the amount of instructional time while still managing in the system that exists today.
Yeah, I can think of an emergent literacy success that sort of begins to move a child into conventional literacy. We were working in a preschool classroom serving children on the autism spectrum. One little boy, a 3-year-old, had an interest in print, hadn't shown us lots of convention, didn't seem to recognize letters. He wasn't a kid who spoke, but had an interest. If we read books with him, he was very interested. When we brought writing tools into the play center, he was really interested. We used to do an activity called Sign In, and kids would write their name. I'd show up in the classroom to do reading and writing activities with them, and they would sign in. They would attempt to write their name. So in most cases, that meant they scribbled all over the paper. One day I brought in letter stamps, and Josh, before I had a chance to lay them out, I was getting everything else set up. Josh grabbed the J and the O and the S and the H, and he stamped J-O-O-S-S-H. And then he grabbed the exclamation point and did that. I'm not sure he knew what that meant. But that was a left to right, and clearly something he understood, not necessarily something he had learned. But what happened after he did that was he then said J-O-O-S-S-H. Nobody knew that he could talk. His teachers had told us he couldn't talk. His mother's told us he couldn't talk. So there's a kid that the ability to read and write actually led into more conventional communication. So his speaking followed his use of print.
The success story that I always go back to is my friend Jordan. Jordan is now a man in his mid-30s. He was the first student that I ever worked with in the capacity of research. And when I first met him, he was 11 years old, has severe cerebral palsy, has pretty significant cortical visual impairments, can't use speech to communicate, was the proud owner of a brand new Dynavox dynamic display communication device that he could not use yet. He was still working on a really consistent yes-no, and loved being around other people. Like, that was the thing. He was highly motivated by social interactions. Over the course of the next 8 years, so met him when he was 11, he has an amazing team led by a mom who is a very skilled special education teacher and assistive technology specialist. And having those the combination of those skills in a mom was a really good thing. Jordan got quality emergent literacy instruction for about 3 years. He was fully included in a general education classroom, and so that emergent literacy instruction happened in the context of general education 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classrooms. People figured out how to have him engage in reading and listening with when other kids were reading for the purpose of interacting. People were working on helping him learn letters and sounds and how to use those letters and sounds to start doing some spelling. He was using his Dynavox with word prediction to start doing some writing every day. Fast forward to the point when he's 17 and gonna finish high school and continue working on learning, but do it through a homeschool opportunity. He's a reader and a writer. I went to his graduation party, and he had created a whole display that was his memories that he wanted to share with all of his friends and teachers who would be coming. And the thing that he prepared special for me was this book that he had made, which was the first time that he was able to show the world that he was a reader and a writer. And it was a book about a frog, from a tadpole to a frog. And that experience when he was 11 or 12 years old was profound enough that that was on his display with a message that he wrote as a much more literate 17, 18-year-old that said, "I wrote with Karen my first book." He now is the director of a documentary about old-time music in North Carolina that is making the circuit on documentaries. And you don't know that it's someone who has disabilities until the very end, when you see him in the end of the documentary going up on stage. And he is now traveling all over the Southeast and is a good enough communicator that he's going up on stage afterwards and answering people's questions live as they're asking them. Pretty dramatic change. And the name of the documentary is Broadcast, A Man in His Dreams, and you gotta see it.
Teachers should expect that they can get to levels of reading and writing that will change their independence and their ability to communicate with other people. If you can get a child, any child, to the level of about a 4 to 5 year old typically developing child, they have a tremendous amount of control over print. They can spell phonetically, for example. A child who could spell, or an adult who could spell phonetically, would be able to communicate beyond the limits of any picture symbol system. They'd be able to communicate unique messages, and you'd be able to read and write with them in ways that would make sense. That would give them a tremendous amount of control, ability to interact with people, change people's perceptions of their capabilities and their intelligence.